My name's Leonie Bell and I'm the director of V&A Dundee, and we're cock-a-hoop, to use a nice expression, to have you all actually with us in Night Fever in real life, but also broadcasting to an audience online as well. So thank you for making the effort to come out with us tonight. We're very, very grateful. And we're delighted, absolutely delighted to be hosting tonight's event with Pam Hogg called Club Couture. And doing it in an exhibition space feels really, really important. Our audience over the last year have meant everything to us, as have our members, our funders and our donors. Your interest in us and your support propels us forward into the future with confidence and optimism. As many of you will know, we're V&A Dundee, which means that we're Scotland's design museum. And our mission is to inspire and empower through design, and to champion and celebrate design, but importantly also to champion and celebrate designers and the infinite possibilities that they bring to our world and our lives. I keep saying the word delighted because we are so delighted to have Pam here tonight, because we've been hanging out with her coat that's up on the wall here and her bodysuit that's in the Scottish Design Galleries for the last few months. So to actually have Pam in real life is exciting, and we're also really enjoying that she's going to be joined on the stage by Mairi MacKenzie, a fashion historian at Glasgow School of Art, and Kirsty Hassard, one of our curators. Together, Mairi and Kirsty curated the space that we are all in tonight. You're going to hear a little bit more about the context of the talk from my colleague Nicole in a little minute, but I just want to touch on Night Fever and what it's meant to us at V&A Dundee, and I hope to all the audiences that have been able to see it. It is on until early January, so for anybody that hasn't seen it, come for the first time or come back again, because it's full of riches. It's been a really special and actually at times a poignant and emotional exhibition for the team at V&A Dundee. It reopened us in May this year at a time that was really difficult for many people. And it reopened us after months of closure. And of course, at a time, and this has been really important to us, when clubs across the world, Scotland and Britain, and music venues were still closed. Night Fever is an exhibition that, although it isn't a club, it is though full of energy, optimism and life. And it's important for us to recognise that it is a celebration of clubs and their culture as critical cultural spaces and as catalysts of creative and social change and progress. So to have Pam here tonight, also an agent of change, makes sense to us. Pam is one of the great fashion designers of our time and a style icon in her own right. She has captured over many years the imagination of so many with her audacious, fearless and timeless clothing, but also the outfits that she's put together over the years for herself and many other people's. And what she does with her clothing and her outfits is give power and strength to women around the world. We can think of nobody better here to have with us this evening to really get under the skin of some of the ideas, the energy, but really importantly, the lust for life that is within Night Fever and clubs around the world. This room, if you have seen the exhibition, you'll understand it's quite different in tone, in style and in atmosphere to the rest of the exhibition. The team at V&A Dundee felt it was really important that it was a more informal counterpoint to the more formal exhibition in the rest of the spaces around us. It's a tribute, really, to the many clubs that some of us were in the late 80s and 90s across Scotland. But really importantly, it's a tribute to the people, the clothes, the music and the flyers and the memories that brought those places and still bring those places to life. So tonight, we're going to hear from three people who are really, really going to explore those ideas. But for now, I just want to say thank you again for coming. Thank you for coming out in real life to hear these three great speakers and Pam tonight. And I'm going to hand over to my colleague, Nicole Keane, who is our creative programmer at V&A Dundee and has put a huge amount of energy into creating a wider talks programme to celebrate Night Fever. Thank you and enjoy.
Hi everyone, as Leonie said, my name's Nicole Keane and I'm the creative programmer here. I just wanted to say a few words about the wider context of programme that Pam's really amazing talk is going to sit within. Through the public programme, we've been able to explore club culture from graphics to architecture, lighting to music, fashion to furniture. And we've been lucky enough to have some really amazing speakers, contemporary designers and thinkers come in and be a part of that. People like Jeremy Deller to Ian Schrager, who is the co-founder of Studio 54, and you can watch some of those talks on our YouTube channel. And then we've also got Framing kind of after this talk, we've got a talk coming up with Ben Kelly, the designer of the Hacienda. And I think all of those talks together as a whole kind of program of activity around Night Fever really puts into focus that clubbing is a major thread of contemporary life. Nightclubs are epicentres of improvisation, and I think Pam really embodies that. They are spaces for experimentation and gathering places for the avant-garde and places to kind of get to know your own identities. And I think that's something we're going to talk about tonight, and fashion plays a really major role in. So tonight we're joined by the iconic Glaswegian designer Pam Hogg, and she's going to be talking with cultural historian Mairi MacKenzie, as well as V&A Dundee's curator Kirsty Hassard. V&A Dundee curator Kirsty Hassard. I can say her name, I promise. So without further ado, I think I'm just going to invite them to join us on stage.
Just to say to everyone, thank you so much for joining us tonight. So in the exhibition Night Fever, the section that's through there and also predominantly through here, fashion plays such an important role, ranging from Halston in New York in the 1970s, Leigh Bowery in 1980s London, and for the 1990s, Vivienne Westwood and Walter van Beirendonck. All of their stories, all of their objects are present in the show. Mainly because nightclubs are key sites of fashionable display. They project status and identity. Clubbers project status and identity through their choice of attire, spectacle, and self-expression. And as previously mentioned, we're so privileged to have Pam's work featured in 2 sections of our galleries, right there, and also in our Scottish design galleries. And tonight we're here to discuss Pam's career in the context of nightclubs and fashion, working with Mairi to create the extra expanded content in the section that you're in at the moment. So it seems an obvious question to kick off first to Mairi. What was your role on the exhibition?
Hello, everyone. So my role, this was an existing exhibition. Night Fever started at the Vitra Museum in Germany, toured around Europe. And when it was coming to Dundee, I was brought in alongside Kirsty to curate a Scottish section. The remit I was given was that, curate a Scottish section. So it wasn't particularly precise, which in a way is great. It gives you lots of room for manoeuvre. But also, where do you start? So, and also Scottish people love going out, so there's no shortage of nightclubs to draw upon. So I decided based on practical matters and also social, cultural and economic matters. I picked the period from 87 to 97. It was a time of massive social, cultural change, new music coming into the country, new ways of clubbing going on. And from a practical point of view, it's what was available. You know, people don't have stuff from the 60s. People don't tend to have stuff that much older. And there was ephemera and lovely pieces of memorabilia from clubbing in that period. So in a sense, that helped to dictate how we looked at the section.
And obviously, I think fashion was one of the most important things, really, as a medium to tell that story.
Yeah.
Yeah. And why particularly did you choose the designers that you chose, and I guess particularly Pam?
Okay, so dressing up was a huge part of what made Scottish clubbers distinctive in this period. I mean, people dress up everywhere to go out. People wear whatever they want to go clubbing, but there was something really quite distinctive about Scottish clubbing. And for want of a better term, how up-thought it they were, and the type of clothing they wore was showy, and it was, you know, you noticed it, basically. And it coincided with the rise of designer boutiques at that time. There was a great second-hand market going on, and the inventiveness of all of that coming together helped to decide what clothing was in this. So to narrow it down again, always have to be practical about it. I decided to focus mostly on Glasgow. It's what was available and it's what I knew best. And focus on one boutique each in Isan, which was seminal. It introduced loads of designers, including Pam, into Glasgow, although Glasgow didn't need much introduction to Pam, and other designers that you can see on the wall here.
And I guess for both of you, Glasgow's probably pretty formative in your clubbing experiences. What sort of memories do you have of that time?
Well, clubs have always been the kind of motivation to dress up. Even when I was a small child, I started making my own clothes from the age of 6 because my older sister was too tall, so I didn't get her hand-me-downs, but I got everybody else's, and I just mashed them together and forged my own identity then. But it was like when I was a teenager, and you start realising there are clubs out there that matched the music that you were into. It was always about, and the way I thought about clothing, I always, when I was making my own things, I wasn't really making dresses. I was wanting to look like Jimmy Page or Keith Richards, and it always, what I was making was always connected to music. And then when I was old enough to go out to clubs, my favourite outfit that I made was a pair of herringbone trousers that were kind of a bright rust and sort of fawn herringbone. Very tight fitting, but a very slight flare. I completely made them up. I totally self-taught, all by hand as well, because I didn't have a machine at that point. And the best thing about it was I was actually quite shy, but it was all the guys that came up and said, "Where did you get them?" So it's like, "Where did you get them? They're fantastic." So that opened up a few doors as well.
And Mairi, what was your sort of formative experiences?
I mean, I'm from Stranraer, so my first clubbing experiences were small town discos that played Bonnie Tyler one minute and then Pump Up the Jam the next. And then I moved to Glasgow, and I was into going out. I was out every night for a long time, and I worked in the tunnel handing out flyers. I also got paid to dance there. And one summer I got paid to dance. Well, I worked as a dancer in Magaluf with Jerry Halliwell, Ginger Spice. So yeah, I just loved it. And clothing was a big part of that. I wanted to dance, so I wanted to be comfortable, but I wanted to look good as well. And also from a professional point of view, my research is a methodical examination of the passions of my youth. Dressing up, boutiques, nightclubs, so on and so forth.
And I guess that sort of idea of lived experience is so important to both of you.
Well, I never saw myself ever as a fashion designer. I love clothes and dressing up. That was it. And basically there was nothing in the shops that I wanted, so I made them myself. And I had always been doing this, and then when I went to the Glasgow School of Art, there wasn't a fashion department there, but every department, so I think there was the fashion show that every single department, no matter if you were, doing clay work or, sculpture, anything, everybody did. And that again was something fantastic, because when I arrived, I was quite shy, and I had never experienced anything like this before, like being amongst people who felt the same way as me. And I was allowed to join the fashion show, and they gave me something like £3 to go and buy fabric, and it was wonderful. Anyway, but funnily enough, the first time I got a sewing machine was I won a prize in my department for something, and I used the money to get a sewing machine. But I was making things like a maxi coat and like hot pants. I remember they're really bright. It was actually a deep pale blue satin, but like dungarees, but chopped off tight dungarees, and that was the kind of thing I was wearing at art school. And yeah.
Do you remember who you were going out with and where you were going?
Oh God, yeah. Well, actually, I can't remember some of the names of the clubs, but I remember Maestro's, which was halfway up the hill
Street
to the art school. But it gets quite fuzzy, because I also, as soon as because I had gone down to the Royal College of Art after the GSA, and when I finished there, I immediately was given a job as a lecturer. So I came back up to Glasgow, and I was still in the same frame of mind as the students were there, and I made best friends with the students, and we'd go to Maestro's. But I can't remember what we were wearing. I just remember we were rolling over the floor all the time. It was just like you hit the floor. That was it. Like a roller disco, but it was just us rolling.
Yeah. You shouldn't remember a good night out, should you?
Pardon?
You shouldn't remember a good night out.
They all mashed into ones. It was like continuous.
And in terms of the move to London and the club scene there, what sort of things were you wearing? Who were you encountering? Who were you clubbing with?
Yeah, this was actually vital, because when I was growing up, I didn't really connect with anybody really with the clothes things, except it was mainly guys would connect with me, and it was always to do with mods and long leather coats and all things like that. But when I got to London, it was to go to the the Royal College, but I didn't actually feel very connected there. I think Glasgow was so extraordinarily good. It was quite difficult to follow that on. But what I did discover was the Blitz Club, and that was everything. And basically, I'd heard about this guy, Steve Strange, who was ruthless, and like even told Mick Jagger at the door, "Would you let yourself in? You're not coming in here," because he was, he was just casually dressed, and I think probably a lot of you know about Blitz Club by now. But for me, it was insane because I was a bit worried about going because I thought I'd heard so many bad stories. And I went with my friend, and by this point, I'd actually dyed my hair bleach blonde, and I was still just I was still wearing like finds from like Brick Lane. I mean, Brick Lane was where, I had trawl there, but that was actually about 5 o'clock in the morning, straight out of Blitz, straight down to, the weekends, we would always be going to the clubs and then just staying up all through and then going down there. And, but when we first went, me and my girlfriend, we were standing in the queue, and I was like, oh my God, we were getting closer and closer. We could hear what he was saying to people, and people were getting turned away. And I was like, oh my God, let's leave now. I don't want to be embarrassed. Let's leave now. And she was furious, but I was like, no, I can't go in. Anyway, we were about to leave the queue, and all I could hear is, where do you think you're going? I was like, oh my God. And he said, come here. And I was like, oh my God, I'm going to get talking to. And and he just went, well, go in then. Go in and do this. But it was when you got inside, and then it was like the fashion police. All these extraordinary, I've never seen anything like it in all my life. It was the most inspiring situation. But literally you'd go in and they'd be like, looking at you like if they thought they were good enough. Like, looking up and down, like all this stuff. But, and every single week, that's what people did. They worked the whole week making clothes to go out. So that was my first proper experience of when I eventually, that ended up starting my fashion career, because I had never intended being a fashion designer, but it was, people would come up to me, because I started making my own clothes from then, and people would come up saying, where did you get it? Made it myself, can you make me one? And all of a sudden it was like, I was in the arena.
So fashion came to you?
Absolutely, yeah. It demanded it of me.
Going back to some of the people that you were with, you were telling a pretty amazing story about Leigh Bowery when we were chatting earlier.
Yeah, and it was great to see the exhibition. I don't know if you've seen the exhibition, but it's absolutely incredible. And it brought to mind the times I had with Leigh. One great thing about London at that time, we're talking early 80s, because my first collection, which you'll see bits of it there, was 1980. I started doing the collection, I started making collections of clothes, but I wasn't showing them, and that was like 79, 80. But at that time, I think it was 1983 or something, hyper happened, and actually Leigh Bowery was next door to me there. He arrived in London about 83. But the story that I was saying earlier when I was looking at the exhibition, the club thing, we were approached by this incredible club in Vienna. It was their opening night, and they invited myself, Leigh Bowery, Rachel Auburn, John Cranshaw, who sadly was no longer with us, and, oh my God, one other person, I can't remember, there was 5 of us. And the deal was that they would pay for everything. We came over, and each of us would do one night's fashion show for each night of the week. And I was like, I'm going first, because I just wanted to do it and then just get trashed, basically. And Leigh, I think, was the second night. But I mean, it was the most insane and wonderful time, because I only knew Leigh as this incredible genius who made extraordinary things. But I never, on the last day, he came round to pick me up to go for breakfast, and I was a bit late, and I just said, I'll just go into the front room. We were all farmed out into artist studios, none of us were in the same place. And the flat I was in was so big, I didn't even notice the front room properly because we were just like there just to crash and then go back out again. Anyway, all of a sudden I hear all this classical music, and I thought he'd just put on, records or something. When I came in, he was sitting at a grand piano. He was playing his own compositions, classical, insane music. I mean, the guy was total genius.
Incredible.
And he's got the things of his in the exhibition.
He's got a major part in the exhibition. Oh, sorry. Major part in the exhibition. And in fact, our next one is coming up in February, Michael Clark. So it's a really lovely link between those two shows, actually.
And Michael, you might not know, actually did a club in late 80s with an ex-boyfriend of mine, Phil Dirtbox. So that was one of the big clubs down there as well. And with Lily Allen's father, Keith Allen.
Everyone's connected.
I don't know if a lot of people know that.
So what sort of inspiration were you taking from the club scene when you were out? Was that sort of like direct link into what you...
I didn't. I was just going to the clubs to get trashed and meet people, let's say politely. I've always made clothes out of necessity because there was nothing out there. I mean, at that time, there was a great shop called PX, and I thought it was brilliant, but it wasn't me. So that's why I was making clothes. So I was making clothes to go to clubs, and then all of a sudden I was able to, have a place like Hyper, and then my own shop to allow other people to wear clothes to clubs. And at that point, I think every single video, because MTV came about, every video that my clothes were in, they were everywhere. It was I didn't even think about it at the time, but all the walls in my shop were covered with editorial, with everybody wearing my things. And people like Lady Keir, Delight, Groove is in the Heart, you know that track? I mean, I saw the cover of the Face magazine and I was like, oh my God, I had absolutely loved her, and she was wearing my stuff. And I got to know these people. These people became my friends, so I was really lucky. My connection with clothes connected me with the most incredible people. Sorry if I've not really answered your question.
I have a question about, so you saw it on MTV and your friends were buying it. But do you remember the first time you saw someone you didn't know wearing your clothes?
This is a good question, because you were asking about, what I was wearing going out to clubs, and I know what I was wearing most of the time, but that wasn't really thinking of that. And I know loads of people were messed up because they've actually sent me photographs and people come up to me in the street and everything. But the time I remember the most when someone was walking straight to it because it was daylight, because in clubs you just, you meet people in the toilet and you go, oh, that's a good colourway on you and things like that. But this was in Paris, and this person was walking straight towards me, and all of a sudden they started like, having a fit. And I was like, oh wow, you look amazing. And they were saying how they were so embarrassed because they'd met me, and I was like, why would you be embarrassed? I'm absolutely thrilled. You look amazing. Oh, I just thought you might not think I was good enough looking to wear your clothes. I was like, oh my God. I said, you've no idea, how wonderful that is for me, because, to know that, and people have come up to me so many times saying, oh my God, you're Pam Hogg. I used to, save up and come to your shop. It was like a pilgrimage. Loads of people said that, and that literally had changed their lives. And it was like, this is the best night of their life was like putting on my catsuit and then getting it taken off at the end of the night.
I guess that links back so beautifully to the fact that when you did the call out for the clothes, it was Pam's work that came up again and again.
I mean, I'm not just saying this because you're sitting here, but I couldn't have had a show without including your clothes, because it was referenced so many times when I did the call out. So in order to get these clothes, I just did Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, asked people to send images of what they had. Now, a lot of it people had worn to death. A lot of people got in touch and said, oh, I had the Pam Hogg catsuit. I wore it until the backside fell out of it. And that was the most referenced. And for me, growing up in Stranraer, looking to go out clubbing in Glasgow and London, I remember, and I don't know if I've imagined this, but it was a clothes show episode in Glasgow, and it had Rita Rusk and Paul Koya being interviewed in Princess Square, and then they did a small feature on your catsuits, and that's the first time I remember seeing it.
I have no recollection.
I don't know if you were being interviewed, but I think your clothes were on it.
All right, okay.
Just the
My shop.
Yeah, to this, yeah.
And that's Gary Murphy, my manager. True Scott. I have to tell the story about Gary. So basically, I was in Hyper, and actually the reason I got into Hyper was because someone had asked me to be part of a very small group. It was like it wasn't a fashion show, but it was just a stand. I had a little stand, and this gorgeous guy comes in, like really classy, young guy, and he comes in and he just said, I've been around the exhibition and I just want to tell you that I absolutely love your things, and they stood out so much, and how had I thought further about what was going to happen, like, for me doing a collection was like, I was just putting things together and just, I don't know where it was coming from, because I wasn't, like when I have influences, I don't know where they are, because they just, I take in loves and then they mash around in my head and then they just come out. And anyway, this guy was Casey Hayford. And Joe was the first person who came to me, and it was the way he said it to me as well. And he was so classy, this guy, and so well dressed and so well spoken. And he just imparted all this knowledge in this short space of time, and just said, basically, have you heard of this place called Hyper, which I hadn't? And he helped me get in touch with him, and it was due to him that I continued, because I don't know how much further. I didn't know, I had no in fashion. I didn't really know how much of a closed shop it actually was as well. So for someone like him, I'll never forget it.
Yeah, an amazing designer. And this outfit over here with the white silk shirt with the clubs on it, black clubs, and the patchwork jeans is by Casey Hayford. And that was owned by Stephen Flannery, still is owned by Stephen Flannery, who was one of the owners of Each Nissan. And also, they're a heavy pair of trousers. If you go out in any club, it's roasting. And I love that dedication to just wearing what you're wearing, and wearing it even though you're really sweating and very hot.
Yeah, I think if you're looking at those objects again, really read in detail the quotes that are along with each piece, because they really sort of sum up the idea of what it was like to wear these pieces, often in very, very warm club settings. Yeah,
and I think that's why people like mine, because they just pull it on. It was their second skin. And that's actually how I was designing them, because when I did my first catsuit, I literally was naked again, because I did life drawing was one of my favourite things, and the body. So it was all about balance. So I literally was drawing on myself. And then I realised I actually just make some plain catsuits and draw on them, because I had black marks. The black marker, it doesn't come off. But that's how I actually did it. So it was like a body suit.
Can I just ask about the boutique? Because I think of shops when I was growing up and how they were the first stage really in going out that night. They had great music, charismatic staff, flyers on the counter, and it was a part of the theatre of dressing up and going out. I never got to go to your shop, so what was it like? How did it operate, and what were you...
Okay, well, I'll just briefly go back to Hyper, because I had my shop there, and then I had to find a shop person. Because I was literally thrown into the deep end, and basically, I don't know, I put an advert somewhere, and this guy kept, making contact with me. But I thought it should be a girl, because all my things were made. I made everything on me. That's how I had no patterns. I made the patterns afterwards, and so I had always imagined it was going to be a girl. And then he said to me one day, basically, if you don't take me, I'm going to have to go back to Scotland, and I really don't want to. And he was gorgeous. Well, yeah, he was absolutely gorgeous. Such a lovely guy. And I just went, okay, we'll give it a trial. And he was the manager for my shop, and he came with me to, this is my new shop. And well, that was Hyper was like a unit. I don't know if you know, it was like fabulous 2 floors units, for which I wish was happening today, because I don't think there's anything
No,
enough.
I think Dover Street
There's
Market
not
tried
enough.
to
Yeah, no. It's
rip
far
it
too
off,
expensive.
It's too expensive.
This you could, and you could make something the night before, the day before, 2 days before, and put it in the shop. Anyway, so this is Newburgh Street, and at one end of the street was John Paul Gaultier at one point. A couple of doors down was John Richmond. And the buzz was incredible. There was a White Hart across the road. Was it White Hart? Can't even remember now. But it was a meeting place. I mean, everyone tells me that they used to, arrange to meet at my shop. And the shop itself, I was told that, oh my God, it's going to cost you a fortune to do your shop, especially the lighting. When I went down Brick Lane, found all these pretty horrible, there's lamps that go on the wall, and then there's another. Anyway, I just twisted them all about, sprayed them gold, painted my ceiling midnight blue, and made a what do you call it? Like a rotating thing. And everyone's going, wow, where did you get that? It cost me about £10, the whole lot. And it was a very, very, Mairi would call it a boutique, because it was a small shop. But everybody used to congregate there, and I've got a great story about Debbie Harry and how we met.
Go on, yeah, please. Go ahead with that, yes.
Do you want to know? Okay, so basically it was times when I had actually started doing fashion shows, small, I was group shows. So the first shows I was doing was group shows. So you were allowed to make about 4 outfits, and that killed me because I wanted to make 24. Mm-hmm. But this was this one time, and I think I was allowed to make 18. I think I might even have been I was part of Hyper at this point. And I had a couple of students working with me, and I'll never forget it. It was the day before the show, and I had misjudged, and they'd been working really hard. I said, just go home. They were like, no, there's far too much to do. Anyway, I sent them home and then realised, actually, oh my God, there's so much to do. But someone, Alana Curry from the Thompson twins, who I didn't know was huge friends with Debbie Harry, she'd invited me to a party which was next door. And at midnight or 1 o'clock or something, I just felt I needed to get out of the studio. And then as soon as I got, it was next door, and as soon as I got in there, I just thought, oh my God, I can't converse with anyone. I felt like I was in a big bubble. And I saw Alana, and I just said, I'm really sorry, Alana. I can't stay. She said, oh, you've got to meet Debbie. And I was like, Debbie who? Next minute, the door opens, Debbie Harry walks in, and I am like a statue, just petrified. And I had never, ever thought of, I didn't really think, I thought Debbie was absolutely gorgeous, but I didn't think she was punk enough. And it wasn't, Susie Sue was the stallion on the stage. That I was more interested, I thought, as soon as Debbie Harry, I was like, wow. And she came walking straight up to me, deadpan face like this, because I was probably going like this. And Alana said, because she introduced me as, oh, you've got to meet Pam Hogg. She's this incredible designer. And I was like, I can't believe she's saying that. And then Debbie put her hand out and I said, I love you. I was mortified. I was like, where did that come from? And then I went, I love it. And I think I said it 3 times. And I felt like a -5-year-old. And she was just looking at me like, who in the hell is this? And then Chris Stein, who, it was like a whirlwind. It was like 10 minutes had just gone into like 2 seconds. The next minute, he whipped me away onto the dance floor, and I'm like doing all these moves with him. I didn't even think to say, would you like to come to my show? And then I had to go back to my studio and finish everything off. 2 or 3 days later, I was back to myself, wearing one of my pieces, lying along a chaise longue in this club with a cocktail in my hand, black mesh and wet look, see-through cat suit. In walks Debbie Harry. And I'm like, first thing is, but I'm really relaxed by this time. And I'm like, oh my God, I hope she doesn't remember the idiot from 2 days before. So she's walking straight towards me. I'm actually like that, like this. And she's coming towards me, and I said, you want this, don't you? And she's like, I might do. I said, okay, do you want to meet me in my shop tomorrow? Where's your shop? I was like, it's, do you want to take it down? It's Newburgh Street, number, whatever it was, I can't remember. And I said, 3 o'clock? And she said, 3 o'clock, okay. She leaves, and I'm like, oh my God. And I call Gary. I'm like, Gary, are you sitting down? Are you sitting down? Tomorrow you've got a visitor. I said, sit down. Debbie Harry, you could hear him scream all the way back to Scotland. And so I said, when she arrives, if there's people there, let everybody leave, and just, if I'm not there for some reason, just make sure she's okay. And then when the last person leaves, just lock the door so she's, feels comfortable. So anyway, I get there, and I'm not normally late, especially for something as important as that. So I get there, my door's locked. So I'm standing at the door, and I'm banging at the door. She comes up to the door like this, and she goes, sorry, we're closed. And I thought, you and I are going to be best friends. Yes.
That is a pretty incredible story. Yeah. I don't think you could top anything you said so far tonight, but that's definitely done it. I actually just want to bring it back to the idea of shops and retail that Mairi's touched on already, and obviously you've touched on your own store. But what other places in London were stocking your pieces?
Well, amazingly not. I mean, Harrods stocked that coat. Yeah. I mean, they were incredible actually, and I was stopped by quite a few people. An amazing shop in Manchester called Gaze, obviously Itchy Nissan. But Harrods they would call me up and say, Pam, you're the only person we have to plead with to get stock. People call us up and go, would you like a reorder? And they had to, try several times to get, but they restocked, which, because I think a lot of people, they think when they're stocking their shops, they think only about the terms of money and what people have bought before. And my policy was always give them what they don't know what they want. Because people used to say to me, oh my God, this is what I've always wanted. But there wasn't anything like my stuff out there. So that's what Wayne and Harrods did. They took a chance. If there's a shopkeeper out there, take a chance.
Just from a practical point of view in terms of manufacture and distribution.
Say that again?
Just from a practical point of view in terms of manufacture and distribution, how did you keep up with the orders and do it? Right, okay.
When I tell you that I make all my clothes myself, I mean I make them all myself. When I tell you that even now when I do my collections, I make every first sample myself. I generally make at least 80% of the collection by hand myself. When I started doing these things, my first order from, where's the slides where I showed you? It was my first collection.
Oh, I will flip back.
Because, like that.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, back again.
This one?
Well, this was actually my first collection. This was Paris at a show that became that was actually the Pompidou Centre, I think. But everybody will probably know, if you're into fashion, about Somerset House, and that's where the fashion people, they have stands to sell. This was like a mini, that was my rail. And if you put this slide before, my lovely sister is in the audience, and she's got a shock of her life because she didn't know the stuff. That's my sister. I said, moi, ici. So this was actually when I started designing, like thinking collection-wise. I've forgotten the question you asked me though.
The question was, just from a practical point of view, manufacturing, getting all the stuff out.
So I took this collection to Paris, and I got orders from all these people. I couldn't do them because I made them up as I was going along. I didn't really know how to fasten things properly. I didn't know, because the things I'd made before were quite simple, and the simplicity has kind of run through. So I just punched eyelets and I print, these are my prints as well, my first prints. And so I did the little buckling there, but I really couldn't, I wasn't prepared to make a collection, but then about a month later, I had to just, I think a lot of magazines wanted them. That was what it was. So they were in a lot of magazines. And then the shops started to, no, there was a shop called Chatters, that was it. A shop called Chatters, and the girl who's in the thing, in that picture there, she was, her name's Cheryl, and she was, she bought the clothes for the shop Chatters. So that was the first one. But after that, and then they moved it to the, the Winter Palace. I mean, the chandeliers were about the size of this room. It was insane. I forgot what I was telling you that now.
The sort of reuse idea of your clothes.
So in there, I mean, nearly every piece that they had chosen, Judith is fabulous. Clark. Yeah, she's amazing. Was recycled. So here's my pieces alongside Dior and whoever, and mine were made of curtains. Curtains, found gold fringing, found everything was found, and. And even the headdress. There's one of my collections where I literally had nothing. I couldn't have put a show on, and I was desperate to make something. So the ideas were still flowing, and I thought, right, charity shops. So and I ended up with bin loads of old 60s plastic flowers, which I took home, scrubbed in my bath, and I hadn't been well at that point, so I couldn't really move much. So I sat at home and created all these headpieces, and so that was in the exhibition.
Yeah, I remember that. It's incredible.
That?
Yeah.
So you went to Vienna?
Yeah, I installed it at the Barbican, and then Vienna, and then the third venue in Belgium, I think.
That's right.
So
actually,
the whole way through. Yeah, beautiful show.
So.
Incredible. Can I ask about the shops that stocked you in Glasgow and what you thought of Glasgow clubbing when you were travelling back out from London, where you went out and...
All right. Okay. Yeah. So basically, but the biggest shop was Ichi-Nissan, but who I went out with clubbing was because I had been a student, and then all of a sudden I was a lecturer. I came up to Glasgow, and it was a really good year. So basically, I just guided the students. They were really good, and I actually ended up becoming best friends. These became the people who I went out clubbing with when they came back down to London as well. And I was hanging around with the people at Ichi-Nissan as well. I mean, like, they were hard party people.
I mean, another piece from Ichi-Nissan is the John Richmond Destroy leather jacket. That was owned by Amanda Glasgow, who was the manageress there. And she says about that it was in 1990, and there was a cock ring on each shoulder, but they fell off when she was out clubbing. And she liked that it said warrior. She wore it every night. She liked that it said warrior in the back because she felt like a warrior going out every night till 5 a.m. during the City of Culture year. I mean, Stephen and Michael were party central.
Absolutely. And Linda
Lawrence as well.
Yeah, Linda as well.
Incredible. And where else were you going out in Glasgow when you were coming back up?
Glasgow. Do you know what? I had to write them down because there were so many. Well, Maestro's was probably, because that was like disco fever time. Excuse me, I'll remove one pair. It's actually a good prop. And I can't remember. Yeah, Night Moves, Fury Murray's. Probably none of you old enough to know all this. Reds, which was above Nico's, the Sub Club, the Volcano, Mars Bars, Bennett's. Oh my God, Bennett's on a Tuesday, Gay Central, Insanity. That was amazing. Panama Jacks, The Arches, the Tunnel. And yeah, I used to go clubbing with John Skinner and Claire McLean. Actually, Claire McLean came down to London, and we used to go out to all the companies there. But in Glasgow...
well, you were talking about the tunnel earlier as well.
Yeah, yeah, the tunnel was insane. But I'm actually going to talk about, I've just realised here with my notes, the first shops I went to in Glasgow were actually Sasha, where I got my first platforms with my first grant, because like we didn't have much money, but I got the best grant because we didn't have much money. So I went straight into Sasha, bought myself a long pair of leather boots, and the shop that I went to was Bus Stop. So to go with my herringbone trousers, I was telling you, I got this fabulous tiny little red. And it was so cheap. It was like a Biba-esque kind of shops. It was like a cheaper version of Biba, which was probably the first fashion shop I think I ever went into. But you just asked me a question and I jumped.
Just about going out in Glasgow, because you were telling stories about the tunnel earlier and each Nissan and...
Yeah, it was just, I mean, all the clubs I mentioned, I would literally roll in and roll out of them. I mean, that was it. But the main clubs afterwards with the clothes that you've got in the exhibition, that was mainly London. And it followed on for the Blitz Club was the first big club that drew me in. And then there was Cha-Cha's. And, oh, God, there were so many clubs then, the Barracuda. And actually, I met Grace Jones walking into the Barracuda one time. I mean, it was from the Blitz Club to all the other clubs. There was a whole scene, and I was just really lucky that I fell in with an amazing crowd. And there was one club, I can't remember the name of it, but it was it was surrounded about Burlington Street, and all these people really, like, they were an older crowd, and there'd be people like Bianca Jagger and everything sitting there, like, sipping their champagne, and they were, you know, they're obviously having these really expensive meals that you never thought you could ever be in this restaurant. And if you're walking past and you happen to catch their glance, they'd call you over. So me and Claire McLean would be like, she was so gorgeous as well, so she caught everybody's eye. So yeah, we used to end up at people's table before and after we were in the club. And one of the friends I became, he was my oldest friend, in London, was Tony Gross, who was actually Cutler and Gross, if you know, it was an incredible glasses shop. And he made glasses for Bowie and Elton John and big affairs. These are not his, but I actually got these in Dundee.
Yeah, nice local story.
So meeting these people, and then with Tony, I met who became my best friend, Luciana Martinez, who was the muse of Dougie Fields and Andrew Logan. So through that, I ended up, like, you know, having an incredible group of friends. We had a good gang. But it was always my Scottish lot that I went out with.
What did you think about, I guess this is going back to Glasgow, but Scottish clubs and sort of specifically how people were dressing? Was it different to what you experienced elsewhere?
People really dressed up.
Yeah, which
that was the thing. The funny thing, I mean, like, after City of Culture in 1990, I couldn't believe it was such a fashionable city. By shop standards, there was a lot more shops, but there weren't that many great shops, but people were very inventive, and people obviously travelled to get their clothes, because I thought people looked really fantastic in Glasgow, you know.
And I guess that was probably your experience as well.
Yeah, I remember moving to Glasgow and just being overwhelmed by the price people would pay for clothes. Yeah. But I got used to that really quickly. I'm not that I could afford it, but I wasn't so shocked by like a 500 quid denim jacket as I was, you know, a year earlier. And then just saving up to get that one special piece, wearing it until it fell apart.
Which is what, that's what I always advocate, it's what Vivienne Westwood advocates now. And it really is, I mean, a history actually tells, because you can see any photos of me, I'm always wearing old suits, my drape is over the chair there, second-hand clothes that have been with me for years and years and years. And you just add a little something and you have your favourite piece.
I think, that's what I thought would be a good point to talk about this piece.
But also, you think you pulled up a photo of my catwalk show, and, okay, so on my gas, my babes. So this is Andy and Josh. But what they're wearing there is in a lot of my archive together. That's my tattoo thing. But so the coat I made in about 1987, 88, 89, but it was on my catwalk 20 years later, maybe 30 years later, oh my God, maybe it was. So yeah, about 4 years ago, because it fitted and it had never been on a catwalk. And it's like, well, why not? It fits. So if you give the slide, I think, yeah, there she is.
It's incredible.
And it just is like, well, you can wear that today.
Absolutely.
And my
yeah.
whole thing was that you don't need to keep on buying. And when you do buy, be very selective, and not slave labour, things that are just going to go in the bin, in landfill.
Yeah, away from that sort of idea
Sorry, I
of
don't wanna get
fast fashion.
political, but every day is political.
I think that's actually... Oh, sorry.
That's my studio.
I know. This is my favourite picture by far. When I came across this, when you emailed it, I'm in love with this picture.
Well, this is actually a friend of mine who's in the audience tonight. Murray Charmer's sister had a fantastic restaurant in London, just down the road from me, called A Little Bit of What You Fancy. And this was a Hogmanay, actually. So it's one for Scotland, and my favourite turnip tea cakes.
It's a beautiful pairing.
Just like the end of the night madness. Oh, and actually, this is I think this was in ID magazine or something, but I hadn't actually come back properly to fashion because I left fashion to go back to doing music in 91. I think my last collection was 91. And then I knew I'd come back one time, and then about 2000, about 2000, I didn't have any equipment, but I got a machine into my kitchen and I just started making things. And these were the first things that I made, and they continued. I think there's a picture of Naomi. Yeah, and then I got a call from ID, I hear that you're making clothes again. I was like, and I ran that one up in my kitchen, and that went off to, I think that's in New York someplace, and I eventually made one for Susie Sue, which I don't know. And that was the start of it. And then I continued, and that was the next one that I made. And now I'm gone. There's Susie, and that was pretty much straight after my first collection back in 2009, my Galaxy Warriors. Because I mean, when I in the 80s, I was always like the first big collection that was. Well, it was actually picked up on by all the magazines, and that was called Warrior Queen, and I ended up on the cover of ID. That wasn't actually meant to happen. It was meant to be a 2-page interview, but the guy took me to the pub, and it's one to read, and it became a 5-page interview, and then I was like on the cover, and. Then, so that was working. So I did, they were all ended up about war, goddess at war. But it was always my clothes I made to empower women. And a lot of people used to say, oh God, I could never wear that. Put it on. And they're like, oh my God, And like immediately, I feel I've got a very bad posture. I'm sitting, but it does make you feel, untouchable. And, so Susie, I was like, I want that. So she borrowed loads of my stuff to just, go on stage. And she came. I've had quite a few awards, which is fantastic, but only ever in Scotland. Thank you very much, Scotland.
So it makes complete sense that you're represented across V&A Dundee, I suppose.
Yeah, I'm really thrilled to be here. Thanks very much.
I think it might be moving on to my final question before I pass over to the audience, but it was actually to bring it back to museums and what you feel about your work being in the collection of museums, because the piece in the Scottish Design Galleries is obviously in the permanent collection of V&A South Kensington, and what sort of relevance, I guess, and significance, I suppose, that has to you.
Well, to me, it's everything. I've never seen myself as a fashion designer, but I am known as a fashion designer. I make clothes, but I create. I see myself as a creator, and I move through different genres. And I always felt I would have been better suited in the sculpture department. Actually, when I went to London, I wished I had changed over because I was dying to go down there. I was always hanging around, hoping that, because the V&A was just at the bottom, and that was my haven. I used to go in there all the time, and it was round the corner. I knew that the sculpture department was there, but I actually, believe it or not, I was quite shy, and I just hoped that somebody would invite me in, and I wondered if I could have changed over, but I didn't. And then, as I say, it was the clubs that brought me back in and got me doing fashion. I've forgotten your question.
Just about your work being in
but
museum collections and in exhibitions,
me,
actually.
Everything, absolutely everything. And it's seeing, because I feel that someone actually said to me one day, I don't know if I should be saying this, but I will. I've started, so I'll finish. I was at Frieze, the Frieze exhibition one day, and this person who's like very, very well-known person came up and said, "Pam, the fashion world doesn't deserve you, the art world does." And it rung quite true. So I'm delighted, more than delighted.
We're absolutely honoured to have your work here.
Thank you.
Just say thank you so much to both of you for
the
conversation this evening. Incredibly insightful about both of your work and how it's both come together in this exhibition.
Thank you.
And just to open it to the audience, if anyone has any questions.
Hi, Pam. Thank you so much for that. That was absolutely, just brilliantly inspiring. I wanted to ask you, as someone who's really been at the absolute bleeding edge of contemporary culture over the last 30 to 40 years, where do you see your influences still, ricocheting, and where do you see inspiration and connection in contemporary culture now? What makes you feel connected and alive when you look around?
I feel connected, full stop. I feel connected, and I'm so, just about every day someone comes up to me and says, "God, you've really inspired me. I'm doing fashion because of you, or I'm doing films because of you, and because of you. This is everything to me." And I absorb, but I don't know, I don't deliberately absorb. I can't help it. I'm 24 hours creative. Someone mentions something and I'm like, shh, and I've designed. In one of the slides that might have gone up, I was asked to do a collection I was asked to give a nod to Pussy Riot in 2014, and I had been so ill that I wasn't planning to do a show. And I'd been asked to do this 3 weeks before Fashion Week. As soon as they said it, I said, "Oh my God, of all the times that I'm not showing, I would have definitely," but I hadn't even got the sentence out. And I thought, what do I feel about Pussy Riot? Them coming out and still going, "Putin, I'm after your ass." Like, courage. And then I thought, courage. I thought, I've got my title. This was in seconds, fractions of seconds of being asked to do a show, to do a nod. And I was designing a collection, and I was like, I've got a big box of scraps. I never throw anything away. And I thought, okay, there's enough for 10 outfits there. I can do that. All my lovely gay boys, who's afraid of, the best clubs I went to were always gay clubs. That's where the joy was, and that's where, they express the joy in clothes. I did a collection in 3 weeks and got things that hadn't managed to get on the catwalk and things like that. But getting back to the connection, I don't know if I'm explaining myself properly, but I just create because I absorb, but I don't, I can't say I got that from there and that from there. There isn't, I can't specify. But the fact that my work resonates is everything, because I actually was asked to do a talk in 2019 at the Royal Academy by Frieze Art. And I was there. This was so mega, because in their words, they wanted me to talk, in their words, for me being the trailblazer, for the young, the outsider, the innovator. And that was mind-blowing. It was like, because I've had so many knocks from, places that, I don't know, I felt that I'd been locked out of. The main fashion arena, I was the door was always closed, let's say. So that was absolutely everything. And the fact that people come and connect with me, I just see their faces and then just the look, you know, it's not even just, it's what they look at, the way they say. So I know that, and knowing that you've touched people and that you've inspired, I think that, you know, it's a great gift for me, and it's a great gift to give. And I think it's a cycle, because seeing all these lovely, you know, people who are, you know, so energized and have been influenced by what I've been doing, what other people, you know, that I feel connected to, because there's people I do feel connected to. That in itself, it feeds round. You know, you give out, you get back, you give out, you get back. I don't know if that's answered your question.
Thank you. Have we got any more questions? I think we've only got time for one more. Oh, there's a hand. Do you want to pick this up? Yes, please. Thank you.
I wasn't going to ask a question, but this is actually a thank you. I'm here.
Could you possibly maybe stand and take your mask down? Because I've also got tinnitus, too many loud clubs, the bass, right, you know, boom, boom.
It's not a question as such, and I wasn't going to ask anything, but thank you. I worked at one of your shows in Paris with Leigh Lapthorne in 2012. And yeah,
very poignant show that. That was my debut in Paris, yeah.
And you were probably one of the only people that was nice to me and made me feel welcome. So thank you.
I'm glad to hear that.
And yeah, I've now started my own brand here in Dundee. So I've got my own fashion brand from experiences like that. So
amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think that's all we have time for with questions, and I think Leonie's just going to pop up and do some closing remarks.
I don't know if I am going to do any closing remarks, because actually that comment from the audience, I think, kind of said it all. And actually, I guess the importance of kindness in what can appear a harsh industry, and remembering those relationships. I think what we've got from you tonight, Pam, is just a really rich history of the things that have driven you and have kind of continually been an impulse for you, and then that pulse has kind of come out of you for all of us. But I think we could have spent all night just listening to you three chat on the stage. Some of us have got our own memories of certain clubs in Glasgow and what we wore and red or dead catsuits and all of that sort of thing, but actually to have that expanded to, I think, an audience that actually covers quite a range of ages has just been great. So I think the fact that you are so timeless and can speak a universal language of fashion and music, but ultimately I think Pam loves. So thank you so much for coming and sharing that tonight.
Thank you.